In a world filled with noise, distractions, and endless pursuits, the teachings of Jesus on a hillside in Galilee over 2,000 years ago still resonate with a clarity that cuts through the chaos. The Sermon on the Mount isn't just a collection of old sayings. It's a blueprint for a life that transcends the ordinary. Yet, how often do we really grasp its full depth? What if I told you that these ancient words hold the key to navigating our modern world with grace, wisdom, and unshakable peace? Picture this: a moment where you're not just surviving but thriving, where the anxieties of daily life no longer have a grip on you. The Sermon on the Mount offers exactly that. A radical shift in how we view success, happiness, and even our very identity. But here's the twist. It's not about adding more to your life. It's about redefining what truly matters. Imagine unlocking lessons that challenge conventional wisdom and invite you to live from a place of deep, inner strength. This isn't just another religious talk. It's a journey into the heart of what it means to live fully, to love deeply, and to build a life on a foundation that can't be shaken. The setting. Imagine yourself standing on a hillside in Galilee, more than 2,000 years ago, surrounded by a captivated crowd. The sun dips toward the horizon, casting a warm golden light over everything. At the center of it all is Jesus, about to deliver words that would echo through history, the Sermon on the Mount. His presence exudes a calm that soothes even the most restless hearts, and there's a palpable sense of anticipation in the air. It's as if time itself has paused, allowing everyone there to absorb every word that's about to be spoken. A gentle breeze stirs the leaves of the olive trees. The crowd settles in, ready to listen. There's no need for loudspeakers, just the reverent silence that amplifies Jesus' voice. These words aren't just for those gathered. They're for anyone who's ever sought meaning and purpose. What he's about to say will change lives, challenging the way we see the world and ourselves. It feels like standing on the edge of a cliff, about to leap into a new understanding. Jesus begins to speak, and the words flow like a river, simple yet powerful. He's not preaching from a throne or in a grand synagogue. He's among the people, in the midst of dust and stones. This setting reminds us that the greatest lessons don't come from palaces, but from humble places where profound truths can be spoken clearly and directly. It's the humility of this scene that adds even more weight to his words. Each word from Jesus seems to resonate deep within the soul of every listener. There's a silence that's more than just the absence of sound. It's a powerful presence, as if everyone is connected by an invisible thread. This is one of those rare moments in history when the truth is not just spoken but felt to its core. You can almost feel the warmth of the words embedding themselves in your mind, ready to challenge your deepest beliefs. And it's in this seemingly ordinary setting that Jesus begins to deliver the most revolutionary sermon of all time. Get ready, because what comes next is not just a speech. It's our invitation to reimagine life, purpose, and the very concept of happiness. And so, without hurry, but with a palpable expectation, he prepares to introduce the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven. As Jesus begins to speak, he introduces the kingdom of heaven in a way that flips conventional wisdom on its head. He starts with the Beatitudes, where he teaches that true happiness and blessedness come from being poor in spirit. This isn't about material poverty, but about recognizing our deep need for God. It's a call to humility, to acknowledge that we can't do it all on our own. Imagine the relief in knowing that it's okay not to have all the answers, that we can lean on a higher power. In a world that often equates success with self-sufficiency and wealth, this message is revolutionary. It suggests that the path to real contentment begins with admitting our limitations and opening our hearts to something greater than ourselves. For those listening on that hillside, it must have been both challenging and liberating. It's a reminder that fulfillment doesn't come from accumulating more, but from seeking more of what truly matters: spiritual richness. Jesus then continues, highlighting qualities like mercy, purity of heart, and a thirst for righteousness. These aren't just virtues, they're keys to living in harmony with the kingdom of heaven. In today's context, this could mean practicing compassion in our daily lives, like helping a neighbor in need, or choosing integrity even when it's not the easiest path. These teachings push us to look beyond surface-level success and aim for something deeper, something eternal. The beauty of the Beatitudes is that they're not just lofty ideals, they're practical guides for how to live. For instance, being a peacemaker in a world full of conflict is no small feat, but it's a calling that brings us closer to the heart of God. When you choose to forgive instead of holding a grudge, or when you stand up for what's right, you're aligning yourself with the principles Jesus laid out on that hill. These actions may not always bring immediate rewards, but they cultivate a life that is rich in the ways that truly count. Jesus speaks of the kingdom of heaven. He's not just describing a distant paradise. He's inviting us to experience a taste of it here and now. This kingdom isn't about power or prestige. It's about living a life that reflects God's love and grace in every interaction. And as we explore these teachings, we begin to see how they set the stage for the radical ideas that follow in his sermon. Radical teachings. As Jesus delves deeper into his sermon, he introduces concepts that are nothing short of radical, even by today's standards. He speaks of loving one's enemies, a notion that goes against every instinct of self-preservation and pride. Imagine someone wronging you deeply, and instead of seeking revenge, you respond with kindness. It's a challenge to the very core of human nature, yet it's exactly what Jesus calls us to do. This teaching isn't just about being passive, it's about actively choosing a higher path, one that leads to true peace. Jesus also talks about turning the other cheek, a phrase that has puzzled many over the centuries. What he's advocating here isn't weakness, but strength of character. It's about breaking the cycle of retaliation and showing that you are above petty squabbles. In modern life, this might look like refusing to engage in workplace gossip, or choosing not to lash out when someone cuts you off in traffic. These small acts of restraint can have a profound impact on both you and those around you, setting no example that others can't help but notice. Going beyond the letter of the law to embody its spirit is another revolutionary idea that Jesus introduces. He challenges his listeners to not just follow rules, but to understand the deeper purpose behind them. For instance, it's one thing to refrain from stealing, but another to cultivate a heart that wouldn't even consider it. This shift from mere obedience to genuine transformation is what sets Jesus' teachings apart. In your own life, this could mean not just doing what's expected, but going the extra mile to help someone, even when it's inconvenient. The idea of loving your enemies and doing good to those who hate you is perhaps one of the most difficult teachings to grasp. It's easy to love those who love us back, but extending that love to those who oppose us is a true test of faith. Consider someone who has caused you harm. How might your response change if you approach them with compassion instead of anger? This doesn't mean accepting wrongdoing, but it does mean refusing to let bitterness take root in your heart. In doing so, you reflect the very essence of the kingdom of heaven that Jesus speaks of. These teachings are not just ideals to admire from a distance. They're meant to be lived out in the gritty reality of everyday life. Jesus is inviting us to rise above our natural inclinations and to embrace a way of living that is both challenging and deeply fulfilling. As we reflect on these radical ideas, we begin to see how they tie into the broader message of personal transformation and the pursuit of a higher purpose. The Lord's Prayer. In the heart of his sermon, Jesus introduces the Lord's Prayer, a prayer that has become a cornerstone of Christian faith. But it's more than just words to recite. It's a blueprint for how to connect with God on a personal level. Jesus begins by addressing God as our Father, a term that was revolutionary at the time. It shifts the perception of God from a distant, authoritarian figure to a loving parent who cares deeply about his children. This is our invitation to enter into our intimate relationship with the divine, one that is built on trust and love. The simplicity of the Lord's Prayer is where its power lies. It covers the essentials of life: provision, forgiveness, guidance, while keeping the focus on God's will rather than our own desires. When you pray, "Give us this day our daily bread," you're acknowledging your dependence on God for even the most basic needs. It's a reminder that everything we have comes from him, and that our trust should be in his provision. not in our own ability to provide. In a world obsessed with self-sufficiency, this is a call to humility and reliance on a higher power. Forgiveness is another central theme in the Lord's Prayer, one that Jesus emphasizes repeatedly throughout his teachings. Forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. This isn't just about asking for forgiveness. It's about committing to forgive others as well. It's a powerful reminder that holding on to grudges only weighs us down and separates us from the grace we seek. In everyday life, this could mean letting go of old resentments or choosing to resolve conflicts rather than letting them fester. By doing so, we align ourselves more closely with God's heart. The prayer also asks for guidance. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. This is a plea for help in navigating the challenges of life, acknowledging that we are not always strong enough to resist on our own. It's a recognition of our vulnerability and a request for divine support. In practical terms, this might mean seeking wisdom in difficult decisions or asking for strength in moments of weakness. It's a reminder that we don't have to face life's trials alone. We can rely on God to lead us through. Jesus teaches this prayer. He's offering more than just a way to communicate with God. He's providing a framework for how to live in harmony with divine principles. The Lord's Prayer encapsulates the essence of the Sermon on the Mount, urging us to seek God's kingdom and righteousness above all else. And as we internalize these words, we prepare ourselves to explore the new priorities that Jesus will soon lay out. New priorities. As Jesus continues his sermon, he begins to challenge the way we think about our priorities. He urges us to shift our focus from material wealth and earthly concerns to the pursuit of the kingdom of God. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, he says, and everything else will fall into place. This isn't just a call to action. It's a reordering of what truly matters in life. Imagine the peace that comes from trusting that if you put God's will first, your needs will be met, even in the most uncertain times. Jesus addresses the anxiety that often accompanies our pursuit of material things. He points out the futility of worrying about what we will eat, drink, or wear, reminding us that life is more than just these things. In today's world, where success is often measured by how much we accumulate, this teaching is countercultural. But Jesus is inviting us to see beyond the immediate and to trust that God knows our needs and will provide. It's about letting go of the relentless pursuit of more and finding contentment in what truly satisfies. This shift in priorities is not just about giving up wealth. It's about changing our mindset. Jesus invites us to store up treasures in heaven, where they are safe from decay and theft. This could mean investing in relationships, acts of kindness, and spiritual growth, things that have eternal value. For example, instead of spending all your time chasing the next promotion, you might choose to invest more in your family or community. These are the kinds of priorities that align with the values of the kingdom of heaven. Jesus also challenges us to trust in God's provision rather than relying solely on our own efforts. He uses the example of the birds of the air and the lilies of the field, which are cared for by God without toiling or spinning. This doesn't mean we should be idle, but it does mean that our efforts should be guided by faith rather than driven by fear. In practical terms, this might look like making decisions based on what's right rather than what's profitable, trusting that God will take care of the rest. Jesus speaks about these new priorities. He's not just offering advice. He's inviting us to live a life of greater purpose and deeper trust. By shifting our focus from the temporary to the eternal, we begin to see life from a new perspective, one that is less about what we have and more about who we are in God's eyes. And as we embrace these teachings, we prepare ourselves for the next lesson, where Jesus will address the importance of how we view and judge others. Judging others. As Jesus moves forward in his sermon, he touches on the delicate subject of judging others. He cautions us to first examine ourselves before pointing out the faults in others. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? This metaphor is a powerful reminder that we often focus on the shortcomings of others while ignoring our own flaws. It's a call to self-awareness, urging us to clean our own house before we criticize someone else's. In today's culture, where judgment can be quick and harsh, especially on social media, this teaching is more relevant than ever. We're often tempted to critique others from behind the safety of our screens, forgetting that we all have our own issues to deal with. Jesus is encouraging us to take a step back, to reflect on our own behavior and attitudes before casting judgment. This doesn't mean we should never offer guidance or correction, but it does mean we should do so with humility and self-reflection. Jesus also implies that when we judge others harshly, we set ourselves up to be judged by the same standard. For in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. This principle of reciprocity is something we see in many areas of life. What you put out into the world often comes back to you. If you approach others with understanding and compassion, you're more likely to receive the same in return. It's a reminder that our attitudes and actions have a way of coming full circle. This teaching encourages us to adopt a mindset of empathy rather than judgment. Before we criticize, we should try to understand the other person's perspective, their struggles, and the context of their actions. For example, if a coworker seems irritable, instead of immediately labeling them as difficult, consider what might be happening in their life that's causing stress. By approaching situations with empathy, we not only avoid unnecessary conflict, but also create opportunities for connection and growth. As Jesus wraps up this part of his sermon, he leaves us with a challenge: to be more introspective, to focus on our own growth, and to approach others with grace. This isn't about being passive or avoiding accountability. It's about fostering a spirit of kindness and understanding. And as we absorb these teachings, we're led naturally to the next lesson, where Jesus speaks about building a solid foundation for our lives, building on rock. As Jesus brings his sermon to a close, he presents a powerful analogy about building our lives on a solid foundation. He compares those who hear his teachings and put them into practice to a wise man who builds his house on a rock. When the storms come, and they always do, the house remains standing because it's built on something unshakable. This isn't just about physical structures, it's a metaphor for life. Jesus is urging us to ground our lives in his teachings, ensuring that when life's challenges arise, we have the strength and stability to endure. In a world where trends and opinions shift like sand, this message is a reminder of the importance of having a firm foundation. Imagine trying to build a career, a family, or even your own sense of self on fleeting things: money, status, or the approval of others. When the inevitable storms of life hit, be it financial hardship, personal loss, or societal change, these foundations can crumble, leaving us lost and shaken. But those who build their lives on the principles Jesus taught, love, forgiveness, humility, find that they can weather any storm. Jesus contrasts this with a foolish man who builds his house on sand. This house might look sturdy at first, but without a solid foundation, it's vulnerable to collapse when the storms come. In practical terms, this could be someone who bases their self-worth on superficial achievements, or who ignores the deeper, spiritual aspects of life. When adversity strikes, they might find themselves unprepared, struggling to find meaning or direction. Jesus' warning is clear: a life built on anything other than his teachings is a life built on a fragile foundation. But building on rock isn't just about avoiding disaster. It's about thriving in the face of challenges. When your life is rooted in the values Jesus laid out, compassion, integrity, faith, you become resilient. You're not swayed by the changing tides of circumstance because your foundation is secure. This doesn't mean life will be easy, but it does mean you'll have the inner strength to face whatever comes your way with confidence and grace. Jesus concludes his sermon. The imagery of the wise and foolish builders lingers, urging us to reflect on our own lives. Are we building on rock or sand? It's a question that invites deep introspection and prompts us to take action. And as we consider this final teaching, we're left with the understanding that applying these principles is not just about hearing them. It's about living them out every day, creating a life that can withstand any storm. As you reflect on these timeless teachings, ask yourself, are you ready to apply this wisdom to your own life? The lessons from the Sermon on the Mount aren't just historical relics. They're living principles meant to transform your everyday reality. What will you do with this knowledge? Will you continue on the same path, or will you embrace the challenge to live differently? If this message touched your heart, I encourage you to take the next step. Consider how these teachings can lead you to a life of deeper purpose, greater peace, and unshakable joy. And if you haven't already, why not accept Jesus into your life today? He has a plan and a purpose just for you, and it's one filled with hope, love, and endless possibilities. Before you go, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another powerful teaching. And if this video spoke to you, I believe you'll also love my recommendation: Why Jesus Had to Meet Moses and Elijah at the Mount of Transfiguration. Bible Mysteries Explained. Click the card on your screen and dive into this incredible story. Let it edify you, reveal mysteries of the Bible, and bless your life abundantly. See you in the next video, and may God's love continue to surround and guide you always.